I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make a cherry tart, and this is what it looks like. This tart starts with an almond flavored sweet pastry crust. Then we're going to fill it with an almond cream, also called frangipane. We're going to top that with some fresh Bing cherries. And then once the tart is baked, we're going to brush it with an apricot glaze and pearl sugar. So, to begin, we are going to make our sweet pastry crust. This crust has a crisp yet crumbly texture. It is so good. So if you have a stand mixer like I have here, use your paddle attachment, but you can also use a hand mixer. The first thing we're going to do, I'll just take my bowl, we're going to sift our dry ingredients. So you will need 1 1/4 cups, which is 160 grams of all-purpose flour, plain flour. And then I'm going to add 1/3 cup, 30 grams of ground almonds, also called almond meal. You can buy it at the grocery store, either on the baking aisle, or you sometimes find it in the health food section, or you could just take blanched almonds and then just process them in your food processor until finely ground, either way. And then for sugar, 1/2 cup, 60 grams of confectioner's sugar, powdered or icing sugar, you may know it by. And then I'm just going to add just 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram of salt, and 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram of baking powder, just to give our pastry a little bit of a lift. And I'm just using a strainer. If you actually had a sifter, you could use that. I do this to mix them together, and plus I find your almond flour or meal or ground almonds, there tends to have lumps, so just get rid of that. Okay. So now what we're going to do is add 5 tablespoons, which is 70 grams of, have your butter cold. I'm using unsalted butter here. And I've cut it into chunks to make it easier to incorporate. And what we're going to do is beat this on medium-low speed until you don't see the butter anymore, and the mixture is actually quite grainy. So I'm going to say on medium-low speed, say, around 3 minutes. Your mixer may be faster or slower than mine, so it may vary, but until you can't see the butter and it's nice and grainy. Okay, we're done. So I'll just take this off so I can show you. So this is what it looks like. Kind of looks like sand. But there's no, when you feel it, you don't feel any butter. So that's what you're looking for. So now our last ingredient is 3 large egg yolks. It's about 52 grams. And have your egg yolks cold. And then I'm going to again mix it on medium-low speed until we start to, it comes together. Okay, we are done. Now it takes a minute or two for this to come together, for the egg yolks to mix in there. So don't panic if at first it's not coming together really quickly. And as you can see, our pastry is a bright yellow, and that's from the egg yolks. So if yours isn't the same color as mine, it's probably because of the color of your egg yolks. So now, I like to divide my dough now. We're going to need 300 grams. So if you have a scale, as you know I always recommend a scale, you can measure that out, or it's about 3/4 of your dough. I mean, it's not critical, but so that's about what we need. Because we're making a 9-inch tart. That's 23 centimeters. So this is about the amount of dough you need for that. So now I'm just going to put that in some plastic wrap. We are going to chill our dough until it's firm to make it easier to roll out. So just kind of put it in a round, flatten it. And then I'm going to put it into the refrigerator, I would say about an hour. You want it firm. not like hard, but you want it firm enough to roll out. So I would say an hour. Although you could store it in the refrigerator for a couple days, or you can even freeze this and then thaw it in your refrigerator overnight if you want to do it ahead of time. So we will be back and we will roll out our pastry. So I chilled the pastry about an hour, so now we are ready to roll it out. But first, you will need, now there's a couple options here. You will need a 9-inch, 23 centimeter tart pan. You can use like this fluted one with the removable bottom. That's one option. Today, because I kind of want to do the straight sides, I'm going to use a tart ring. This one has about 3/4 of an inch, 2 centimeter sides. And so, because it doesn't have a bottom, you will need to have a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. Although even if you use the other tart pan, I still would put it on a baking sheet. Makes it easier to carry it. So now, for our pastry, I'm just going to knead it just a little. Okay. Especially if it's really hard, then just knead it a little, or you could just leave it on your counter for a little. And we're going to roll this into about a 10-inch, 25 centimeter round. Flour your surface and the top. Need a rolling pin. You could use a ruler to measure, although I usually just use my tart ring and just about an inch past is about the size of your round, so you don't need a ruler. If you find when you're rolling it, keep moving it, and if it's sticking, flour it. If it cracks a little, just kind of press it together, don't worry. No one's going to know when you finish the tart whether your pastry cracked or not. So don't worry about it. Just keep moving it and rolling it. Okay, that looks about right. So I'm just going to take my ring, put it on there. Let's put an inch. So we are ready. So I'm just going to take my rolling pin and roll it. If you've got a lot of flour, you could just brush it off with your hand or pastry brush and unroll it on top, like so. Now, if you have, which this pastry has a tendency to crack, and don't worry about it. Just press it back together. It's very common for that to happen with this particular type of pastry, but it tastes so good. So if it's a little more difficult to work with, I say that's okay, because the flavor is wonderful. So I'm just going to press it down all the way around. And then once you do that, what you want to do is take your finger and put it right in the corner, especially when you're using a tart ring, because we want that nice straight sides. So you want to move that around and really press it in. And go around, and if it's like a little thinner, then you could just take a little bit of pastry and just press it in. It's kind of like a cookie dough almost. And then once you've done that all the way around, that looks good. I'm going to take a knife and get rid of any excess. Like so. And then take a fork, I'll clean that up, and just prick the bottom of your dough. And that will prevent it, as it bakes, from puffing up. And once we do this, I'm going to cover it. And every time you work with pastry, you kind of stretch it. So what you want it to do is chill it down. Let the gluten relax, and that will also prevent the tart shell from shrinking as it bakes. So that's why you want to keep chilling it. So I'll clean that up. I'm just going to cover it. I'm going to refrigerate it for at least a half an hour. Now, if you wanted to, you could do this like a day ahead, but I'm just going to chill it for about a half an hour. And then when we come back, we will make the almond cream. So now for our almond cream, also known as frangipane, I'm in a bowl. I'm just going to make this by hand. You could use a hand mixer, you could use your stand mixer with the paddle attachment, but I'm just going to do it by hand. You will need 3 tablespoons, 42 grams. I'm using unsalted butter. Have your butter at room temperature. So now I'm using a spatula. You could use a wooden spoon for this. Next, I'm going to add 1/4 cup, 50 grams of granulated white sugar, and I'm just going to mix the two together. Or if you're using your hand mixer, just beat it until their two things are mixed together. Okay, it's mixed. The next thing I'm going to add is 1 large egg, and have your egg at room temperature. So 1 large egg weighs about 50 grams. I'm just going to whisk it just a little to break it up. And I'm also going to add just a half a teaspoon, 2 grams of pure vanilla extract. I like a little almond or little vanilla and almond flavor there. And again, mix it together. You can make this, if you wanted to, you could make it ahead of time, day or two, just keep it in the refrigerator, or, you know, you can even freeze this. I often do that, and then just when I want to make a tart, just pull it out of the night before. I pull the cream out of the freezer, put it in the fridge to thaw out. So that's that, and next, of course, we need ground almonds for the almond flavor, or almond meal, almond flour. Goes by quite a few names. So you will need a half a cup, 45 grams. Again, you can buy them or make your own. And I'm going to sift it because I find it has lumps. And then you will also need just 1 tablespoon, about 12 grams of all-purpose flour. As you can see, pretty easy to make. But oh, it has so much flavor to our tart. So I'm just going to mix all this together, like so. And the next thing we're going to do is get our cherries ready. And then we're going to assemble our tart and bake it off. So you want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And I'll be right back to do our cherries. So now we have our chilled pastry crust, we have our almond cream. Next we need our cherries. You will need a half a pound, which is 225 grams of fresh Bing cherries. You want to use a sweet cherry for this, and this is what they look like. They always come bright red, you want them with the stem attached. So we need to half them, and as you know, cherries have a little pit in the center. How do you get that out? Well, the best way is to have an actual cherry pitter. These aren't that expensive, and believe me, I used to not have one, and the other way you have to do is just take a sharp knife, cut your cherry in half, and then kind of twist it, and then take out the seed. I mean, if you're only making one, it's okay, but this little tool is handy. And then, like I said, you want to cut them in half. What I do ahead of time is I put some paper towel down and then just put them cut side down, and that'll get rid of any excess juice. So For this size, I've got about 30 cherries, thereabouts. You have our chilled pastry crust. Remember to prick the bottom of the crust. Now we're going to put on the almond flavored cream. I'm a big fan. And then just take the back of a spoon. I just got an offset spatula. Spread it out as evenly as you can. Hey, that looks good. So now for our cherries. I like lots of cherries on mine. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do it in concentric circles. I like to put the cut side down, and I put them pretty close together, like this. And just go all the way around. Okay, I'm almost done. Don't press them way down, just lay them on top. These are the cook's treat for me while this is baking. So now, to bake our tart, I find about 30 minutes. I do rotate my baking sheet front to back, about halfway to get even baking. But what you're looking for is your crust to be golden brown. You want it nice and golden brown. The frangipane or almond cream will puff up a little and your cherries will sink, but you can tell by your crust when it's done, golden brown. Okay, so our cherry tart is done. So put your baking sheet on a wire rack. Isn't that gorgeous? Beautiful golden brown crust. The frangipane did rise, puff up. So now what we're going to do is let this cool completely. And you will notice that the frangipane will kind of sink down as it's cooled. And then we'll come back and brush it with an apricot glaze. So our tart has cooled down completely, so we are ready to put on an apricot glaze. So I'm just going to take off the ring. And then for the glaze, you will need 1/4 cup, 60 grams of apricot preserves. You want to heat them just until it gets liquidy. So I just did it in the microwave. You could do it on the stove in a small saucepan as well. And then I want to strain this because there tends to be pieces of apricot in there, which I don't want in my glaze. So I just got a little strainer here. Now the reason you don't have to brush on an apricot glaze, but I do for a few reasons. One, when you put it on any fruit, like the cherries, it will prevent them from drying out, which is a good thing. Plus, it adds a really nice shine and added flavor. So, a few reasons why I like it. So, once you've done that, then I like to add just a 1/2 tablespoon. I'm adding some Grand Marnier. A little bit of alcohol, rum you could use, or cognac. If you don't want to use alcohol, then just add water. And I do this just for flavor, but the Grand Marnier, but also to thin out your glaze. Then I'm going to get a pastry brush, and I'm going to brush the entire top, including the crust. Now, I don't think I mentioned this, but if you can't find, maybe they're out of season, the sweet bin cherries, or where you live, you can't get them. You could use other fruits. Sometimes I use blueberries, I use raspberries, blackberries, and in the winter, I like to make this tart. You can buy canned pears that are in a syrup, and what I do is I just slice the pears and put that on top. And you can do that with other fruit as well. Experiment. See what you like. So, there. See, you can see. And the other thing is, it just kind of makes the tart pop, that nice shine. If you go into pastry shops, that's what they do. So we'll copy that. And then what I like to do is just decorate a little more. I have some pearl sugar, just large, kind of shiny sugar. You could buy it probably cake decorating stores. I just order it online. And if you don't want to use pearl sugar, you could use some toasted, flaked, or sliced almonds around the outside edge. That'd be nice as well. Or just leave it off. But it kind of draws your eye to the cherries, putting the sugar around the edges. Plus, it adds a nice little crunch. It's there. Oh, it's so pretty. You can feel like a professional pastry chef when you do this. People will say, "Where did you buy that?" And you can say, "I made it." So now, the serving platter, just lift it, and there we have it. So now, let's try a slice. Now, you can serve this like warm, room temperature. I store it in the refrigerator, and I like it even cold. You can even freeze this tart, and then when you want it, just thaw it out overnight in the refrigerator. Okay, I'll do a large slice so I can see all those pretty cherries. There. I don't think it needs anything. I mean, okay, I always like whipped cream. You could do that or some ice cream, but really, it's just nice, just the way it is. What I like about this type of tart is you have three components. So you have lots of flavor. You have the crust, which is, you know, it's crisp yet crumbly, and it's got that nice almond flavor. Kind of tastes like a cookie. And then you have that sweet almond cream, frangipane, and then the sweet cherries. Really nice. It's a great combination of flavors. And you got to make it. What more can I say? I love it. You could store it, like I said, 2-3 days in the, I like to do it in the refrigerator. Freeze it, but make it. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyBaking.com.